Well, we're blessed today to have Christopher McGinnis. Christopher, I work with Christopher at Hancock College. He is a public relations specialist. So he basically handles a lot of the writing of the press releases, and he'll tell us a little bit more about what he does at Hancock. But Chris comes with 10 years of experience in print and in online writing news and editorial and all sorts of stuff. So he's got a plethora of knowledge as far as how we should respond to this particular crisis. Chris, do you want to tell us a little about yourself before we get going?
Yeah, sure. So like Gordon said, I work in the public affairs communications office at Allen Hancock College. And basically my role there is to kind of write out a lot of information, write out press releases, and also help with strategizing for crisis communication. I also run and monitor all of the college's social media channels as well.
Yes, and I've worked with Chris on one-on-one with pretty gnarly stuff that happened on campus. I mean, they had to put up with COVID, right? Sending that whole message, and that was what Chris's one of his main jobs was to do that, to make that effective and make that professional in communications. So, Chris, as we talked about, here is what is in the book as far as what to do and what not to do in a crisis. So we'll talk about this first. And then, Chris, you're going to give us what you would have done in this crisis after the students have presented their what their response is. So what we should not do is deny that it ever existed, do nothing, minimize, mislead, lie, or blame someone else. Essentially, we're not supposed to be a politician, right? We're supposed to these issues, right?
Yeah, those do nots are really great, and those are huge do nots. I think one of the biggest things on there, the two biggest things, are definitely don't deny it and don't lie. Especially now with the age of social media and how fast people can get information and react to information in real time. Lying or pretending like it doesn't exist or not addressing it quickly is probably the worst thing you can do. Because when it's a crisis that's big enough that it's kind of blowing up, especially on social media, the time that you're lying, people are going to catch you. If you're not saying anything, the narrative is going to get away from you, and people are going to kind of build their own narrative, and that makes a lot of room for misinformation and people kind of setting their own story, as opposing to you kind of taking control of things, getting people accurate information, and letting them know kind of what your plans are and what the actual situation is.
Right on. Great input. All right, so some of the things that we should do, I'll read them off, and then Chris, you kind of tell us what the things you glean to be the most important. Well, obviously be prepared. Seek to understand the situation. And I think as what we're going to talk about in this course is actually defining the problem. What exactly is the problem? Avoid knee-jerk reactions. We've seen this with people reading off script, right? We want to stick to the narrative. Apologize first, then take action. Take responsibility. Be proactive. Be transparent. Be accountable. Remember to be human. Go ahead of the story. Do not fuel the fire. And what Chris was saying, get ready for all that social media backlash. Monitor, plan, communicate, and then communicate your prevention strategy after the crisis is stable.
Yeah, there's a lot of great advice on there, and I think that first one, being prepared, is a great first step. You can't be prepared for every eventuality, especially with stuff like the scenario you've laid out. Some of these things that end up blowing up especially on social media, really can come out of left field. But being generally prepared for how you're going to do crisis communication and how you're going to respond to crisis is really important. I know at Hancock, we do these huge disaster preparedness exercises, and part of that is us thinking about, in various scenarios, if we need to get a hold of our students, if we need to get hold of our community, our stakeholders, what tools are we going to use? How quickly can we get that information out? What's the best way to make sure the information we're getting out is accurate and it's getting out to the right people? Things like that, really knowing all the tools in your toolbox and setting out a framework for a plan of how to respond to a crisis will really help, because when that time comes, you know, you'll have a plan for it. You'll be prepared for it, because something, especially a crisis that's big, let's say like COVID, you know, it can really knock you for a loop, even if you're experienced, and it can feel overwhelming. So if you have a plan that's there that everyone kind of knows and can work from, you're going to be really, really far ahead already as soon as it hits, because you have something there to go to. It's a great game plan. The other thing that really popped out to me on here is apologize and take action and take responsibility. So once you kind of have all the facts, and if you found that there's something that you or your company or your brand, your organization has done wrong, taking responsibility and apologizing publicly for that will really get you a long way. Right now, especially again with things like Twitter and social media, people have a much more personal relationship with brands. You know, they look at brands as things that they attach, you know, emotions to, and brands that they can contact immediately. You know, before the internet, before Twitter, if you had a bad experience on a plane, you'd have to write a letter or call Delta Airlines. Today, you can jump on Twitter and have billions of people can see your complaint about what Delta Airlines did. And so taking responsibility, not trying to shove the blame off on someone else, I think really goes a long way with showing people that your organization is taking the situation seriously and is genuinely trying to work to alleviate, you know, whatever the problem is.
Excellent. So let's go to the scenario. As a matter of talking about when defects happen, when defective things happen, what do we do, right? Things are going to happen, so what do we do? So here's a scenario. You came up with your team came up with a fertility tracking app that your team develops, and it failed. We don't know how it failed. We just know it failed. The social media is blowing up, saying that your app caused at least 109 documented pregnancies in the last 2 weeks. So they're telling you that because your app failed, I got pregnant. There's a big, there is a cause and effect here. People are freaking out. They're calling for legal action. Thousands of users are demanding their money back. Most users say they will never trust the app again. Your team is not only about to lose money, but you might have some serious legal ramifications that can affect you and your team. You have to respond somehow. You got to do it quick. So take 5 to 10 minutes to draft a 140-word or less social media damage control post. Just a real quick post that you would post on a Twitter, so less than 144 words. One person from each group will read the group's draft to the class, who will respond if it's believable or not. And then at the end, we're going to have Christopher's criteria and what he would have done on the response as a guide as far as how we should respond to this crisis.